It was very quiet tonight. Anyone around? That's good. That's good. All right, 7:30. The time. Can everyone hear me clearly? If you can say yes, yeah, that'll be great. I can get a visual response. If you can click yes. Yep. If you can see me, if you can see my screen clearly, and if you can hear me clearly. Otherwise, say no. Yeah, so I guess that's a yes. All right, so let's clear this thing up. How's everyone going? Yep, things seem to be all right. Yep, it's not easy, especially if you're on some kind of medication that makes you restless. Can't stay in one place. All right. Well, I hope you feel better. So now, as usual, we are going to discuss solutions for tutorial 5. And if you saw the title of this session, it's called Assignment 2 Tips and Tutorial 5 Solutions. So I'm going to give those tips right away, and let's talk about that. And before we do that, do we have any questions? No questions from anyone? All right. So as usual, or as we have been doing over the last 2 weeks or so, I just want to remind everyone that I had people tell me that that there's too much of sidetracking in the discussions in the tutorial sessions, because people are asking questions that might not be entirely related. And so what I'm going to do is, when I go through the explanation of a question or the solution for a question, I will take questions right at the end. So if you have any questions, have them typed up, but don't hit enter. Okay, so have them typed up and then press this raise hand button, and I will be able to see that you have a question, and you will get a turn if there are many people with questions. So that's the fairest way to do that. And okay, so the first question is an optional one. It's playing with programming a little bit. So it's saying, if you have not submitted before, perform steps 1 to 5 below, and else, if you have not performed the final submission already, perform only step 4. In other words, if you have performed the final submission, don't worry about it. But if you haven't, then you can perform only step 4. So anyway, this is the same stuff that you had in the week 4 tutorial. What's new might be what I have added here. Now, these are based on what I had seen before from what students have done, common mistakes. And I don't know whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, but these are the same issues that I continue to see in people's submissions. Okay, so, and also, if you want to talk with anyone, just click on the person's name, double click on them, and then you can talk to them directly. So try to keep the chat window for on-topic discussions as much as possible, but also to those who are getting distracted by the chatter that's going on there, don't get distracted by it, because if there's anything important in that area or in the chat, I will repeat it anyway. So anyway, let's move on. So let's talk about these common mistakes. So I'm going to open up where's the assignment 2. assignment 2.jai, not the solution. I don't want to show you the solution just yet. All right, so a whole lot of stuff saying blah 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 blah, right? And I think you all have felt that at some point. There's a lot of stuff written, and to basically do something very simple. And what you have to take out of that is this: whatever the instructions or the guidelines or the restrictions that are written there, it's all there to help you steer you in the right direction. Okay, so if you look at the assignment to PDF, what's the first thing it says? Right at the top, after, in the first paragraph. So here we go. All right, so what is it saying here? Important. Starting with an important notice. Something must be, really important for it to start off with that, and it's given in bold, and it says, students are assessed for their ability to follow these instructions as closely as possible, as well as for their ability to produce the necessary outputs. So, well, if that's the first thing it's going to say, and if it's given in bold with the important written on it, it's a good bet that you need to stick to that. So you need to do things the way things are explained, and that's the main thing, and that's the main mistake that I see make people doing also. And I think it's also safe to tell everyone to have a read through of the general requirements and restrictions. It's really quiet tonight. I hope you just taken my advice on not cluttering that, and I hope everyone can hear me. That's once in a while, just tell me that you're there. Otherwise, I'll be talking to myself. All right. So with the general requirements and restrictions, just have a read through these also, because there are some really important things that you need to keep in mind. For example, you must not create any functions other than the ones that are given. Right? Yeah. So that's okay. So the assignments are supposed to be intimidating. That's why this point here says, if you feel confused at first, it's more normal than you think, and you will gain this knowledge as you go. And and it says, do not neglect the weekly exercises. So, and you're supposed to put regular amounts of work, and you're supposed to do things in layers. In other words, just add little bits and pieces of implementation, details, and you will get there eventually. So it's not something that, it's not like writing an essay that you feel like, okay, I'm going to sit down this afternoon, Saturday, pour myself a glass of your favorite beverage, and then, it's not one of those things. You just sit down and type away like they show in a movie where, somebody locks himself up in a hotel room and start typing with an old typewriter. That's not going to work. So with programming, you very easily get tunnel vision, because you are focused on one thing so much that you can be staring at an error, but you don't realize that it's there. So the only way to get around tunnel vision is, well, actually there are two ways. The first way is the easiest, which is give it a rest. Revisit this after a day or two. That's why it says to get started early. The other approach is, I'm not kidding, but this is something that some universities have done in the past. They have a teddy bear outside the classroom, right? And whenever a student has a problem, they go and explain it to the teddy bear, right? And trust me, it works. Now, I haven't tried it with the teddy bear, but you need to hear it. Your eyes will only see something that you want to see, almost, at least with this code, right? The rubber ducky method, maybe, yeah. So maybe it's rubber ducky, but I've heard about the teddy bear thing too. Because you don't find rubber duckies too much these days. You don't get too many bathtubs. But anyway, so with that approach, what you should do is read it out loud. Read everything out loud. Read your code. And when you hear it, you will see, okay, wait a minute. That's not what I'm seeing. I'm hearing something and I'm reading something else. So that is one way that you can sort of get over things that. So that's helpful in situations where you are looking at some code and it's not working the way you have written it to work. Now, if you have a whole lot of lines of code that's producing errors, the chances are you haven't done what I have highlighted here, which is developing your solution in layers. Excuse me. So if you develop one little thing at a time, it's fine. For example, if you have to do a copying thing, one thing you could do is maybe get that sort of thing to work in isolation in a completely different document, and at a simpler, smaller scale, and then you ensure that it works, and then you take that concept and you plug it in to or you adapt it to the main program. So if you try to write everything in the main program, yeah, chances are there you will have problems. Now in the assignment, the times where you will have such problems will likely be when you are making a duplicate, right, which is in level 1.2, where you have to, it says you have to use a loop or loops depending on which approach you're going to take. And so this is something you can test in isolation in a separate document. You can even copy this test level 1 to that other document and then test things there to get it to work, and then later you can plug things back in. And the other thing is, well, there are some input validation stuff where it says you need to perform input validation to ensure that the entered value is correct. So to get that to work again, you can do it in isolation, get it to work. And here comes the main part, which is probably the most complex part in this assignment, which is level 2.6 and 3.3. You're supposed to write either 2.6 or 3.3 here, and that's also something that you can develop in isolation very easily. And maybe that is the best way to do it, because if you think about it, if you write everything here, your code is going to place lights and do all kinds of calculations and computations. That's going to take a long time. So it just says repeat a function, right? So level 2.6 says use a loop to repeat the try configuration function some num tries number of times. Now, it doesn't have to be try configuration. It can be just a print hello. So get it to work at that level. So that's the developing in layers, right? So get it to work at a simpler level, and once you get that thing done in a separate document, move it over here and make it work for try configuration. And so again, have a look at the general guidelines. And yeah, so don't change anything. If you if you need to do something, right, it will tell you. Trust me, it will tell you what you need to do. For example, level 2.2 is really straightforward. It says allow the user to open a floor plan picture and load it. All right. So even if it's something as straightforward as that, it will tell you if that needs to be done. In other words, if it doesn't tell you to do it, don't do it. Now, we can't create a list of things. In no programming subject, you will get a list of things that you're not supposed to do. So just do only what you have been asked to do. And like I said earlier, the guidelines are there, the requirements are written because if you follow them correctly, they will guide you towards the right solution. So make sure you are meeting things word for word almost. All right. And again, if you have any questions, you can ask me. So as the guidelines also say, consider yourself as a hired programmer working for a client, and in this case the client is me. So you have to ask me if you have questions. You are not required to ask if you don't have questions, but if you have a doubt, if you don't know how to do something, feel free to ask. So and yeah, so I am still not done. Okay, now common mistakes. Let's see. Starting from the top. Okay, so the first thing that I've seen a lot of people make have problems with is the output folder. Now, what can I say? If you have a Windows machine, you will very likely have your desktop in the C drive. Now, look at the original demonstration of the assignment. So when I release the assignment, this one over here on the 14th of March, yep, March, and it showed I showed how to get the path to your desktop. So if you're on a Mac, you need to do that. Now, I have seen a lot of people. What they do is they go to Explorer, they copy and take here, and then they paste it. Wrong. Can anyone tell me what's wrong about this? There's more than one thing. The slashes are wrong. Remember, we had this. So why change it, right? I mean, if that works for me on a Windows machine, why should you change the slashes? What else is wrong? And there isn't a slash at the end. So it says, over here it says, your path must end with a slash. So a lot of times, that's the problem. So, and I have seen people do this. They put another slash. So, keep them consistent. Basically, I don't need to explain why this is a bad idea, because you should have put the slashes that you had in the first place. I mean, in the example, the same sort of slashes, right? So you need to put it like that, and it needs to end with a slash. So on a Mac, you might be like user something. I can't remember what the paths look like on Macs, but it will look something like this. But you'll need to find out how to get the path to your exact desktop or wherever that you can access, really. And that's that. And even in this one, it says, see the demo at the 1 hour, 27 minutes and 56 seconds point in the recording, because I showed how to do that. And moving on from that, oh yeah, no, just one more thing. Now, I have seen some students who set the path up correctly. They still can't get the output to work. They have put it to their desktop, and it's still not working for some reason. And for those people, what they should try is plug in a USB drive and give the path to the USB drive. So if your USB drive is D, put D://. And I'm only seeing this issue with some Windows users. So my guess is they are logged in as someone other than the administrator. Maybe running JSAT, the administrator, would solve the problem. But if none of that works, just put a USB drive in, keep the USB drive when you're starting the program, and give the path to a location in the USB drive, and then that should work. All right. So the next one is make duplicate of picture. So it goes without saying that you shouldn't change any code that's beyond the parts where it says write your code for the above requirement below and write your code for the above requirement above, right? Basically it's saying right between these lines for this requirement here, right? So I have seen students who do stuff like they take out this thing, or they add new things like that. That's wrong. And it says here in requirements, or sorry, section 4.4 of the PDF, you must not all your codes. You must not modify the names of the functions or change their parameters. So yeah, it says not to do it. Don't do it, because you might get it. You might go one step further by making a change that you're not supposed to do. In that way, you might feel like, okay, I should do it because I can go a step further. But really, you won't be able to go beyond that. Anyway, you won't be able to complete the thing if you make these changes. So these things should not be changed. And this make duplicate of a picture is very important for not the testing, but this try configuration and the complex parts of this program which uses things. So you don't need to understand how this works, but all you need to do is just not change things that you're not supposed to change, right? So and moving on to the next thing. So here it says you must create a new picture object called pickCopy using the make empty picture function, and it tells you where to look. And we have used make empty picture in the lectures. And it says the width and height of pickCopy must be the same as the width and height of pickSource. Now, if you are doing this, if you're saying pickSource equals, you have to change that, because this is wrong in so many levels. First, you are not supposed to change parameters. You are not supposed to modify the parameters. We discussed that maybe last week, where we said we get these values from the outside, and if we change them, we can't do anything. We can't get those things back. So that's one of the things. The other thing is, it doesn't tell you to, for example, it doesn't tell you, ask the user to open a file and create a picture out of it and put it into pickSource. Now, if you look at level 2.1, or sorry, 2.2, I said earlier that even a small step like opening a file and displaying it, it'll tell you if you need to do that. See, there's a separate requirement saying, okay, now you should display the flow plan that you opened in 2.2 or in the previous step, right? And so if it's that important, it will tell you to do it. And if you must not do it, or don't do anything that you haven't been asked to do. So don't overwrite pickSource, because that's a parameter. And I think it was last week when we discussed this. I remember very well even writing down saying that we don't want to overwrite parameters. So where is it? Hang on. So I'm searching for some reason. Okay. Overwrite. Oh, here we go. Never overwrite parameters. We did this last week. So don't do this. Don't do this sort of thing. Right? And we can't get those values back. So listen to the explanation if you are not sure why we shouldn't do that. So you need to get the width and height of pickCopy. And in the lectures, in the early lecture notes, in the lecture slides, we said that a picture object holds these values. So I'm not going to say much more than that. All right, so Kimberly's got a question. So is pick source of a wonky floor plan with the funny shape? So is it too much to disclose? No, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether, well, it's another fair thing. It doesn't matter what the picture is. That's why it doesn't tell you. The long and the short of it is, whatever the picture it is there, your pick copy must be an exact copy of that thing. Yeah. So when you're running the test level 1 function, it creates a picture object just to test it. So it should work on anything. And that's yeah. So that brings us to another important thing. It says the width and the height of pick copy must be the same as the width and the height of the picture source. Now, what some students think is, because the testing requirements say you must create a floor plan of your own that is 312 by 213 pixels exactly. Some students feel that, okay, I am going to make this new picture 312 by 213 pixels. And what's the problem with that? Can anyone tell me? I hope not everyone is doing it. I know, because I have seen people. Yeah. Well, we don't want to hard code. That's one of the things. And the other way to look at it is, well, we want our program to work on a floor plan of any size, right? We don't want to, say, if you want to open up a bigger floor plan on a faster machine, preferably, otherwise it's going to take much longer. We can't, it won't work. And think of it like you're manufacturing some machine. Let's say you're creating a car, right? The manufacturer, will only be able to test this car only on your own roads or your tracks or whatever that you use, a limited number of areas or situations. But once you release it, it needs to work on pretty much any road, right? We can't possibly take it around the world, right? But we will construct some situations, some test cases to test our thing under. So it needs to work under the test cases, but not only under the test cases. So that's why the tutorial 5 common guidelines said not to confuse the testing requirements with the development requirements. So keep that in mind. Don't hard code the sizes. All right. So, and yeah, so it says that also, if you hard code the width and the height, your code is wrong. That's plain and simple. Yep. Moving on to the next one. All right. Hopefully we'll get through this fairly quickly. Moving on to the next one, it says go through each pixel in the picture and copy everything. And it says you mustn't use a loop. So look, there are functions in there that might actually do it, but you are supposed to do it, right? So it says duplicate picture. You can't use that. Copy into whatever. I don't know what else is there. I don't really bother with most of those things. But here you are supposed to demonstrate your knowledge of copying things. Now, we have done, okay, so the things you need, the code elements that you need to complete this, we have done a long time ago. And even recently, we have done this same sort of thing. Okay, so you're not going to need any new commands, let's put it that way, than what you have covered a fair while back. Okay, so again, keep it as straightforward and simple as possible. All right, and again, when in doubt, you can ask me. Now, you can use nested loops, or nested for loops, that is, but it's not necessary. You can use while loops, but they are also not necessary. But if you decide to use while loops, look, they will have to be nested, right? Because we have never seen examples of a while loop in class that where we copied an entire image or went through an entire image using a single while loop, right? So, well, Rohan, just do it the way we have done it in the tutorials, basically. So, take what the examples that we have shown or we have seen in the tutorials as building blocks to build this, and also the lecture slides. So here it says you must now return pick copy. Now, if you remember what was written in the Tut 5 common guidelines, it said if it says return, don't show it, right? Because why? If you need to show it, it will tell you display the floor plan picture or display whatever, right? It will tell you if it needs to be done, if it's something that's really important for things to work. So if it says return, don't display it. Also, if you remember from what we've been saying about general functions also don't display. They leave that up to whoever's calling it, the driver or the other function, right? So that's another way to look at it. Yeah, so you can run test level 1 to test it. And again, in this one, just do what it's asking you to do and display, then get a value from the user first without worrying about input validation. So this is a level 2 requirement. And you can completely skip 3.1 and move to 2.5. So from 2.4 to 2.5, you can go and then get the non-tribes value. And then you can go to level 2.6. So at all times, just make sure that you're writing your answers for those requirements within the spaces allocated for those answers or the code, because we want to know that the student is answering the requirement that we are asking them to meet. It's not, so it goes back to, there's a lot of method to this madness. So it goes back to this thing where it says students are assessed for their ability to follow these instructions as closely as possible, right? It's not just about producing the outputs. You need to produce the outputs, but you need to follow the instructions as closely as possible. So let's say that you are in the first function, right, in level 1.2. Level 1.2 is the place where you're supposed to have the loop, right? It says you must use a loop. No secret there. So it says go through each pixel. Now, if you do that in here, if you write the code in here, right, along with the code that's supposed to be there for level 1, look, you're not writing the code that you have been asked to write, right? You're not following the instructions. So how are we supposed to know that you know what needs to be done? As far as anyone who's reading it is concerned, you don't know what needs to be done. So that's really why we emphasize why it's important to write the code in the right places. So in going back to the input taking stuff inside in level 2, so in level 3 you need to write the input validation code. So the input validation, again, is something that we have shown in the tutorials and in the lecture slides. There was even something like a template showing what exactly needs to be done. And I shouldn't even need to say this, but read it carefully. The requirements, the validation requirements for 3.1, that's different from the validation requirements for 3.2, right? So it's not just a copy and paste, and there is a difference there. Okay, so have a close look at it. And so 3.2 says it should not proceed with a negative number of tries. Okay, so if you are, so don't answer this. If you are not sure about what that means, think of it like this. If there is no negative sign when you print the number, then it's not negative, right? It's positive, right? So so start from say -5, and just print them all the way up to +5, and see where you get the plus sign and where you stop getting the minus sign. So whenever only when you have the minus sign that it's negative. So I can't tell much more, right? But so if you're not sure, that's how you figure it out. And yeah, so don't use request integer in range. It tells you, check the week 5 lecture. It shows how to do that. So now one more quick thing about the input validation. In some of the input validation examples, maybe it's checking for an upper limit and a lower limit, like if it's asking you to enter a PIN number, right? So if there is no upper limit, you just don't put it, right? So that's something to keep in mind. You can't add new things. So that's what that requirement or section 4.4 is saying. You can't add new features. Where is it? Here we go. Yeah, so do not add any features or code that's outside the specification, right? So don't add upper limits unless it tells you that there has to be an upper limit. Right, so print the values of both the best and worst unlit count. That's the last thing you're supposed to do for level 2, okay? And yeah, so that's fairly easy to do. But in this one, yeah, so if you're going to do on level 2, write your code here, right? And if you're going to do level 3 or 3.3 specifically, change this and write your code for 3.3. So you don't write the code twice. So that's why it says, let me get this back. Oops. Okay. Anyway, right. So that's why it says in level 3, complete the requirements for level 2 first, then change your loop from 2.6. Not in addition to your loop from 2.6. It says change your loop into a while loop, and write conditions so that it also stops. So everything about when the loop should repeat should be in the loop's condition. So you can't use a if and a break later on. You can't use a return to stop things. You can't use continue. So set the while loop's condition correctly, and it will stop at the right time. Okay. Yeah. Ben's got a question. So if you do level 2, you don't want to see the level 2 loop. I had thought to comment it out. You can keep it commented out. You can keep that one commented out. Or if you, the thing is this: if you can do level 3, I know you can do level 2. That's just how it is. Because level 3 is harder than level 2, and it's an extension. So if you just don't have any level 2 code, that's fine. As in for this one, just for this one. Yeah. So that's why it specifically says change your loop from level 2.6, from L2.6. Yeah. And yeah, so the best unlit count is a variable that's up here. Now you haven't seen too many of these, but all you need to know is that you can print it out. Just print it out somewhere, or create a new program, create a function, and then have a variable written up here, and see if you can print it. So initialize this to that to -1, and see. So you can do that, and I'm sure you're doing that because I think level sorry, 2.7 is asking you to print that, right? Best unlit and worst unlit. Yeah, so it's all about the while loop in 3.3. And look, that's really what's there to it. And again, to summarize, do only what it's asking you to do. And there are requirements in the specification document too. You have to read those, because you can't write everything inside the code file. I mean, already it's giving you a lot of direction about what needs to be done. But there's more in this PDF file, so that's why that was also constructed. And do only what you've been asked to do. And if you're doing for each and every line of code that you're writing, ask yourself, does this need to be here? If I take it out, will it not work to the requirements, to meet the requirements? Yeah, so Kimberly, do you think level 3 is really challenging, achievable for us? Yeah, absolutely. Oh yeah. Well, it's all covered. So nothing that's beyond. The bonus, yeah, bonus is extra. So if anyone's going for the bonus one, yeah, they need to first finish the assignment normally and get in touch with me. Where do we write the code for all the bonus questions? Yeah, well, that's the thing. So I will tell you how to do those things. But finish the standard version and send it to me as soon as possible, and ask me if you can do the bonus one, that, or say you're interested in doing bonus option A or bonus option B, or is it option 1 and 2? Yeah, so tell me, and then I can tell you what to do. Yeah. So if anyone has emailed me, I would have told them what they can and can't do. Yeah, so you have to suggest your approach. So you can say that, okay, I can think of doing this, but I need to do like this. And then I can say whether it's fine or not. So that's what that's about. And yeah, all right. So let's move on to the tutorial, because we have to cover that as well. And any other questions about the assignment? Yeah, Mansoor. Is it possible to have a message board or something with the questions you have been asked already and that you have answered? Oh, well, that's the thing, because some of the questions are very specific to people's code. I can't, it won't make sense without actually showing the code, and of course we can't do that. But whatever that's general, I talk about in these sessions. And more general stuff, well, you can ask in the discussion forums. Yep, so whatever questions people ask there, I can answer, or Robbie can answer. Robbie is there to answer the general questions. Yeah. But look, this is the reality of it. If you are working as a programmer, you will need to go for meetings, and you know how meetings are. You have to sit through meetings more than you get to do any work, right? So that's just the reality of it. You have to listen to people, listen to clients, listen to bosses, and all that. So yeah, so yeah, they are very unlikely to write everything down neatly and beautifully. So it's just how it is. All right, so okay, so question 2. It says rewrite the mirror vertical function from slide 12 in the week 5 lecture slides. So where are we? Week 5 lecture slides, slide 12, quotation marks, right? So this is the mirror vertical. We need that. So rewrite it in the sense re-implement it. So get rid of that. So just again, not that one. Just a reminder to everyone, please write the code in the section that says write your code here. Don't write anything outside, because anything that you write in the tutorial sheet is going to be related to one of the answers, right? So all that stuff should be within the area that says between this. It's just when people don't do that, there will be marking delays. So as well, Paula's got a question. So the next, well, Paula's time. Okay, Paula's saying I had this problem with source. Okay, was that with this source over here? Okay, yeah, let me show you what needs to be done. Right, so it says create a driver function. So when did we talk about driver functions? Very early on, was it week 3? We said driver. Yeah, here we go. So we have seen this lecture. We have seen this slide a few times now in the tutorials also. It came. Well, what's a driver function? To recap very quickly, if we have a function of interest like this decrease rate in this slide. To get this to work, we need to do quite a few steps. For example, it takes in a picture, right? So this is a picture object, and we need to allow the user to pick a file. We need to make a picture out of it, and then we need to assign it to pick, and then we need to display the picture, then we need to call the function with picture, and then repaint the picture to see the differences. Right? There's quite a lot of steps just to type each and every time down in the command area. Right, in Jest, because you can write one thing at a time, and then if you have to go and redo things, it's a big nuisance, and it's a very tedious thing. So instead, we will just create a function which has the same steps in it. And when we want to test our function decrease rate, we ran driver decrease rate. So the driver function will just have the stuff that you need to get this thing to work. So def, I'm going to call it, what was it supposed to be called? Mirror driver, right? Mirror driver 1. So call it exactly that, because it's a requirement. And what do we need? We need to give a picture object to the source, because you can see that it needs to be a picture object because we are mirroring a picture. But the way Jest sees it, it sees get width, and get width is something that you use with the picture, right? And get height is something that you use with the picture, and get pixel is again something that you use with the picture, and so on. So from those telltale signs, we know that it's definitely a picture, even if this thing was called yikes or blah. It doesn't matter the exact name. By looking at how it's used, we know that, okay, you can't get the width of an integer, you can't get the height of an integer, you can't get a pixel from an integer. You have to, so it must be a picture. So what do? We need to create a picture. So pick, make picture, pick a file like that, and then we might display this picture. All right, so you can say show. Now, I personally like to use repaint every time because it works. It does the same thing as show. Otherwise, it repaints. So it works perfectly fine. And then the next thing I have to do is I have to call mirror vertical, and then I need to pass in the picture, and then repaint again. That's it. So if you compare this driver with what was here, you can see it's really doing the same thing. If you look at that lecture slide. So we have, what do we have? So we have the same stuff. We have the function. We create the picture, pick a file, display it. I'm just saying repaint. That's because I just prefer repaint. We decrease width, or we call the function of interest, in this case mirror vertical, and then we display. So that's most of the time, that's the sort of thing a driver will be doing. It's just setting things up and running it. All right. So if you run this mirror vertical, sorry, what am I saying? Mirror driver 1, right? And let's open up Barbara, and it's running, and there we go. So it's probably not the picture you want to put on Facebook or something like that, but it's working. Any questions? Well, maybe you might want to put it on Facebook. It will be an interesting effect. Do we need to show the picture? Well, we need to see the result. We need to repaint. Why repaint rather than? Do you mean rather than show, Kimberly? All right. So Paula has a question. Or was that from before? No, Mansoor. So the source, well, you don't need to change anything in the code. You can have it. So it's just a name. It doesn't care about what the name is. We can call it anything we like. So only this stuff that's showing up in dark blue and purple, those are the ones that we can't change the names of. Also range, I don't know why it's not showing up in purple, but those are some of the things we can't change the names of. So Mansoor's question is it necessary to have the first repaint? If we don't have it, we will just not see the before. So it's going to only show the after if you don't have the first repaint. And if you don't have the last repaint, it's not going to show the updated one. Not easily. Well, it is a problem because we want to be able to see the effect. To not show the first one, well, it's not that important, but it's good to see that it's working, right? Because what if the person opens an already mirrored picture? We won't know. Yeah. Any other questions? Well, you want to be able to see the changes, and we said that in general functions we leave the displaying of the results to the driver. So, but anyway, that's the point of these tutorials. You learn, and you are not judged in the tutorials. So, Belinda's got a question next. So, why in this case we don't need to return the picture? Very good. Okay, so that's a fair question and very observant of you. Now you've been saying that okay, you need to return things in general functions, but we are not returning anything here. The reason for that is because of the way picture objects are, or how we are actually using this picture object that we are passing in to mirror vertical. So I'm referring to this thing known by source. So we set or we modify the colors in the source image itself. So those changes will be reflected back in the original picture. Now this only works with what we call objects. If you pass in an integer, it's not going to do that same thing. So when did we talk about local variables? Here we go. Variables are local to methods. We said in the week 4 slides. So when we created, here we go. So when we created this variable called name, now this can be a parameter, that's fine. You put something to it, and then in another function we call getName, but we can't print the name. It's not going to work because that was local to the other function. So here we go. We have another example. We have the main function, which is the driver, calling Melbourne and Sydney functions. And Melbourne has a variable called birds, which has a value 5,000. Sydney has another variable by the same name called birds, but with a different value, right? So when you run these things one after another, they are not really affected by each other because these are local. So the same thing happens with parameters, and yeah, but when it comes to picture objects, it's different because it's actually a nitty-gritty detail. There's a thing called pass by reference and pass by value. So if you go to Google and pass by reference, it's something that they're in programming, but we don't talk about it too much because the only time we come across objects is when we are dealing with pictures. Now, if you are learning about object-oriented programming, like when you go to do programming 1, then you will have to understand this concept. But the easy way to think about it is like this. If the changes are reflected back in the original thing, so pic in this case is the picture object we create, we display it, we send it to mirror vertical, and then we display it again. So when you display it again, if the changes are reflected, you don't need to return. There's no problem. We return when we can't get it back, like in the case of that first example we had, where we have this name created inside the getName function, and when we call getName, we can't get the name out. We need to use return. So there's an example of return. Here we go. So here we have an answer that is calculated inside a function, and that answer needs to be returned. And when something is returned, you need to when you're calling the function, you call it, and then you need to say something equals. And in some of the examples in week 5, I think, we would have used return with pictures, not the first one. When we, oh, here we go. So when we created make partial copy of a picture, we didn't modify pic source. So just by repainting pic source, we wouldn't have seen any differences after the copy, right? So we made the changes to this thing called pic copy. All right, so because it's a new thing, we created a new picture object by using make empty picture, right? And we did it inside the function itself. We need to tell the calling function, you know what? I just created this new thing with your answer in it, and here it is. So if you're modifying the original one, original picture, you don't need to return. Because we have created something new, we need to return it. So Tarek, will it be okay if we return the picture anyway after processing, just for the sake of clarity of code? Well, clarity is arguable. For me, clarity is simpler code. So if it doesn't need to return, then don't do it. Yeah, that's my philosophy. There's nothing wrong in returning it. It's just the chances are, you might do something wrong with it anyway. Well, if you're increasing, you're adding one more thing to worry about, basically. Does that make sense, Tariq? Yeah. Any other questions? All right, so let's go back to our tutorial. Tutorial 4, we are in tutorial 5. Here we are. All right, so that's the driver. And let's move on to the third question. And it says slide 7b in the lecture 5 slides shows how to convert between for loops and while loops. So that's a very important slide, and that's really all you need to convert between for loops and while loops. Now, just a quick clarification on this. This third parameter in the for loops, you don't see it always, but if you don't mention it, it's always defaults to 1. So whether you have that explicitly written there as 1, or if you don't have that, you still have to put this x equals x plus 1 and y equals y plus 1 to increment. So if you look at the previous one, it said that step x and step y of a for loop, they are optional step sizes, but it is defaulting to 1. So whatever the step size is, that needs to be put there. So first, you have to think of this conversion as, first you write it in this format. So you can't convert a for loop without the third parameter into a while loop using this guide, right? So if you don't have the third parameter in range, which is the step size, you need to put that, right? So if you didn't have it before, it would be by default 1. So you put that 1, and then you can see the conversion. So I had a few people write while loops without putting this x equals x plus 1, and then what will happen is, well, you are going to keep on going forever, endless, yes, infinite. Yeah, yeah, and that's not a pleasant experience to have, but it's not all that bad. You can always click the stop button unless you have a window popping up each and every time. So it's saying re-implement the mirror vertical function from slide 12. So I think we did that, didn't we? Yeah, so this one which we did earlier, right? And it needs to use only while loops, should not have any for loops, all right? So let's copy it from this one, and feel free to write another driver. So I'm going to actually just rename this driver to mirror driver 2, and this is going to be called mirror vertical something else. Should be called mirror vertical while. So I'm just going to copy and paste that name because that's the name the requirements want me to use. So that's what you should do too. And all right, so converting this, remember by default it is 1, right? So this 1 was there. Now if I run this mirror driver 2, you can see it'll work. So I'm running the second version, it's running fine. And if I put like a step size of 2, it'll actually skip every other row and column, and it's not going to look very nice. So it's just going to do some of them, which is not that obvious for some reason. Why am I not seeing? Oh yeah, sorry, I didn't change the name. This should be the name, right? So let's change this back to 1, and I'll show you it works. Barbara. Yeah, okay, so this is fine. And if I change this to, say, only the y value to 2, it will, there we go. So that's skipping every other row. And if you just do, if you keep that as 1 and if you make that 2, it's going to skip every other column, which is going to produce a very similar effect. And if you, so this is a step size. You can skip by any amount you like. And so this is going to skip rows and columns. But anyway, this has to be 1 because that's the default, right? And now after that, you can just use the conversion guideline on slide, which one was it? There we go. Right? So the first one gets assigned to there. The middle part of the for loop gets put there. And the third one, which we need to put if it's not defined, goes as the loop increment. All right, so let's do that. Where are we? Yeah, so we will say y equals, and this, so this part is the one that we put here, the y, and the 0 we put there, and then we will say while, and then again y less than this middle part, and finally we need to say y equals y plus whatever this is. So just like that, you can convert a for loop to while loop. And don't worry, you can keep them, you can have a mixture of them. So if I run this, it will work fine. There you go. So let's convert the inner loop as well. So the x is because we have this x, right? That's that x. And then equals, this 0 goes there, and we will say while x less than whatever this thing is. That gets put there, finished. And this one we need to put inside as x equals x plus 1. And we can get rid of this. All right, let's run this and check. Erica's got a question. So as you can see, it works. Does it matter whether spaces are used or not? I've seen both ways. No, it doesn't matter as long as you don't put them in the middle of something. So yeah, that's fine. Yeah. Spaces are good to put like vertical spaces, as in like empty lines. It's good. Any questions? Yeah, as long as it's consistent, it should be fine. No questions? All right. Let's move on to question 4. It's asking slide 7b, says how to convert between for loops and mirror horizontal from slide 12 to use only while loops again. So that's was it 7b? Was it? No, slide 12. Here we go, mirror horizontal. And so you see that the order of the loops is a bit different. Here it's got the x loop on the outside and the y loop on the inside. And this really doesn't make any difference, but I will show you how it works. So do the indentation for these correctly, you can always refer to the example. So I'm going to copy the same driver. Now you can't have multiple functions with the same name, right? You have to have different names. Otherwise the computer doesn't know which one you're referring to. So mirror driver 3 is what I'm going to call it, and mirror horizontal while is what I'm going to call this one. And it should work fine. Poor Barbara gets all the hard stuff. Just want to let you know that whenever some of the big changes in the screen, it takes about 5 to 10 seconds to load the whole screen again. So I'll try to scroll. Yeah. All right. Okay. I'll keep that in mind. And no. So Rohan, that's probably over on your end. I thought that was common to everyone, but some people will have delays. I can see a yellow icon, so now it's not there and comes back on. So it's not I can't see that icon for everyone. So, but I will try not to scroll too fast. Yeah. Yeah. All right. So we got that thing to work. That's fine. And now, before we change anything to while loops, let's actually see what the difference is. So if I repaint my picture, which is source in here, just for testing purposes, I can actually see the order in which things are done. It's awfully slow, but I should be able to see something happening. Oh, there we go. So it's doing the columns first. So that's why it's erasing the shoulder. And it's doing it super slow because when you put the repaint statement inside a loop, it repaints over and for every pixel. So it takes a long time, and you can see how the change is happening. And Vicky, yeah. So stop the loop because we know how it's going. So it's going from like left to right. But if you change the order of the loops, if you put the while loop on the outside and you put the X loop on the inside and run the same thing, you can see it's just going to do it. Now the mirroring is done from the bottom. But the loop is actually going from left to right and top to bottom. But we are only changing the opposite pixel, right? So how come the order is different to the order in the width function? Well, the height is the second or the third parameter. So if you're going to get the opposite, vertically opposite one, you have to put it in that position. So by changing the order of the loops, you can see what the difference is. But if you don't have that repaint statement, you're actually not going to see a difference in the way it runs. So Barbara, and there's the effect, and you're going to get that exact same effect if you put the X loop on the outside. So for the end result, it doesn't matter. And that's a part of the learning outcome for this exercise. So we put X equals 0 because this is that 0, and then we will say while, what do we say? X less than this thing over here. Whatever that is, you just put it there. All right, get rid of oops. Well, remember that there should be a 1 because by default it is 1. So there is a 1 here, even though we don't put it. As it says on the slides, and then y equals 0, while y is less than whatever that's here. And then this one is the one that we will put as y equals y plus 1. So the indentation and the place where you put your loop variable modification stuff, that matters a lot, because if you put it in the wrong spots, you are not going to get, you might get an infinite loop. So, and it works with while loops. Any questions? So the next question is 5, and it says implement the partial copy driver and make partial copy of picture from 9b. And so first get it to work, right? So first copy it and paste it. So from 9b, where are we? 9. Hang on. So that's the second one, right? Still called 9. Copy it, go back here, paste it, and the indentation needs to be fixed, and it's intentional in a way. I want students to be able to at least fix up the indentation. When using code that's already there. That's very easy. You just look at how it's done on the slide and just make sure that you do the same thing here. So that's the driver, and that's the make partial copy of picture, which we are running from the driver, right? So let's run this partial copy driver, and let's open up Barbara again just to be consistent with the lecture slides. And there you go. So this copied the top left quadrant of this picture. And sorry. So going back to the question, it says and modify the partial copy driver, right? So don't leave it there. Modify it so that the width and the height values are taken as oh yeah, so sorry, the driver we have to modify. So to take the width and the height as user inputs. You can use request integer to get it to work, but then improve your code so that it performs, oops, sorry, the validation in the style shown on slide 2. So slide 2 is that one. Okay, so if you have slide 2 over on your site, have a look at it. It shows the format of doing input validation. So it's saying instead of having this fixed, say request integer enter a width, and for this request integer enter a height, right? And we can now run it. So partial copy driver, I open up Barbara, and I can say, okay, I want 100 wide and maybe 200 tall. So there we go. So that's what I entered. And then it says that I need to perform input validation. So don't use request integer in range, because that's not something that's commonly available in other languages. And we are focusing on teaching students how to do things on your own. And sometimes you will need to take a value that is outside the range. Sometimes you will need to take a value that is not in a continuous range. For example, if I'm asking people to enter only odd numbers, you can't use request integer in a range. Or if I'm asking them to enter only even numbers, it's not going to work. So that's why we don't want to ever touch request integer in range. you want to be able to do these things, or we want you to be able to do these things on your own. So have a look at slide 2. It shows what to do. You take the input first, and then you say, okay, as long as there is a problem. So there was a explanation as to why we are doing this. So first we tried with if statements, and we said, yes, you can show an error and stop everything. But that's not good enough. If there's a problem, we can ask the user to re-enter instead of just giving up, right? And so we say, while there is a problem, take the input again. So we want to say, as long as the user enters invalid values, we tell them their error. That's an important thing as well. Otherwise, they don't know whether they are entering a new value. And then we ask again. So, yeah. So if you have any questions, keep your hand, press the raise hand button. Now, what do we do? So, where do we enter the input validation code? The while loop. Is it between copy width and copy height, or is it after copy height? Yep, in the driver. That's right, after each one. Okay, so we will say while copy width. Okay, so and we need to be able to describe the problem. What could be the problem? Yeah, so the first one, what could be the problem for the width? Well, if they enter a width, especially a width that is less than 1, there is a bit of a problem, isn't there? Or you can say greater than, less than or equal to 0. So that's going to be a problem as well. So it doesn't tell you exactly. So here we go. Yeah. So what's the smallest valid value and the largest valid value? Oh, that's a twister. Largest valid value for each input. So look, if you thought that 0 is an acceptable width, it's not entirely wrong. Maybe if you are running this thing and if you want to just stop it without copying anything, you can say, okay, 0 is acceptable. So if you like, you can make it so it's not a problem. But here we are saying, okay, so if you don't want to do a 0 width, let's say 0 is not acceptable. And then you do this same thing again, but you need to say there's an error, right? Now, this doesn't cover everything. This is still pretty good, but doesn't cover everything. So if I enter 0, it'll say error. And if I enter a negative value, it'll say error. And it will never get tired. And as soon as I enter something fine, it'll move on. So that's how we want our input validation to work. But yes, we need to talk about the maximum width. All right. So it has to be less than. If it's less than or equals to 0, we have a problem. Or if the width is greater than or equals, or just greater than the width of the picture, right? So we can say get width of pic A. Now instead of saying get width of pic A over and over again, I can just create a variable. Sorry, not what am I saying? Yeah, so that is the copies width, right? So that's fine. So pic A width is get width of pic A, and I will need the height later on. Get height pic A. So I can say if it's less than or equals to 0, or if the copy is going to be bigger than the original, there is a problem, right? And let's see. So now I can't remember how wide the Barbara image was. So I can find that out. 222 or 21 or something like that, right? Yeah. All right. So thanks for that, Wansu. You have put in a good amount of time on these questions, I can tell. When you remember the file sizes, that means you are putting the right amount of time. All right. So enter a width. Now, if I enter some silly width like 500, which this is not, it will say there's a problem. Enter. Oh yeah. So I said it L width. I don't know. That was a typo. Anyway. So if I enter something negative, it'll ask me to re-enter. If I enter something 0, it'll ask me to re-enter. 222, it's fine actually. That was the maximum width. 221 was the last coordinate that you can access, I think. So again, check the thing and it will tell you. So again, enter a height. We haven't done anything with the height, so it won't check anyway. But we got a very thin long strip, and that worked. So we can actually just print pick a and, or we can just print these ones. Print pick a width, pick a height, just for our reference. And we should probably print now, otherwise it's just not going to do it. Print now, one after another, to make our lives easier. And change this to enter a width. So you need to tell them that there's an error. Otherwise, they might think they're entering a new width. And so the same thing we can do for the height. So we have while the height has a problem. So if the height is less than 0, or if the copy height is greater than the pick A height, we ask them to re-enter. Error, enter a height. So you can actually tell them to enter a height between this and this, and that'll be very friendly, but not entirely necessary. So here we go. 222 is the width, 294 is the height. In the early example, I entered 22, and it worked. If I enter 223, it's beyond the size, it will say error. So if I enter 222, it's fine. If I enter a height that is negative, it's going to say nope. If I enter a height that is 0, it'll say no. And if I enter 295, it'll still say no. But if I enter 294, it will be fine, and it just created a full copy of that. Okay. So, so when you're doing input validation, remember to do them one after another. The last thing we want is this, and people will do this, unfortunately. We don't want this, because why ask them to enter a height if there is a problem with the width, right? So if there is a problem with the width, you tell them, you know what, the thing that you just entered is not good. You don't want to tell them, by the way, that thing you entered earlier, way at the beginning, no, we don't want to do that. So is everyone clear on that? It's a sensible thing to do. Any questions? Mansoor, yeah. So, is there a way to print the value range that should be entered? Yeah, we can certainly do that. enter a width. So when they get it wrong, we can tell them, or even before we can tell them, enter a width between well, it has to be 0, between 0 and what's the other one? Pick a width, but we can't just say pick a width and join it up with a string, because this is an integer. We need to convert it into a string by saying str. Yeah, and that's it. That's it really. So you can do the same thing for the height. So if I enter Barbara, and it's telling enter a width between 0 and 222. Yeah, that's very good. Okay, Vicky's got a question. My copy of pic is a blank white. What is going on? Well, a couple of things. Maybe you didn't repaint it after copying. Maybe when you copied things over, there was a problem. Like the set wasn't done. So if you don't do the set color, it will end up white. So even if you do the full height, it's going to just come up like that. So maybe there was a problem with the set color. Maybe you set the set color to the other one, pixel source. Then you get the same, that problem again. Maybe something like that. All right, folks. So that's the end of tonight's chat. If you have any unresolved questions, please drop me an email. Now, I have been prioritizing questions relating to the tutorial over the weekend and yesterday. So I will get to your questions about the assignment now. Yeah, so feel free to stick around if you have any questions, but otherwise we are done. So have a good night, and I'll see you all next week. Remember that the assignment's due next week, and follow the instructions I gave about the mistakes to avoid. And yeah, and so Vicky, yeah, drop me an email with your code, and we can take a look. Or maybe ask Robbie also. Robbie can help. Sorry, was there a question 6? Ah, yes, there was a question 6, wasn't there? All right, sorry about that. Continuing from the theme of the, that one. Thought that was an optional one. Ah, the optional one was 7. Sorry. Okay, my bad. Let's do that. Let's soldier on. Okay. Yeah, no problem. So okay, hang on. We are not done yet, apparently. So continuing on from the question in the last activity, we need to, I was thinking where this was. I thought this was this week. All right, so the make partial copy of the picture, it only starts from the top left. And what we want is something that can copy a region from anywhere in the picture. So to do that, you need to have the starting position as well, right? So that's why it says, okay, write a new version, and we should call it get crop from picture, right? So we can reuse the same code. We can reuse the same code. Don't worry, I won't rush through this. I will show. So get crop from picture is the name. So you can see the function names have things like actions, you know, make something or get something. So get the crop, and let's get this to work with the new driver. We will call it get crop from picture driver. Long name, but it's going to work for us. We have the input validation stuff in place, and we are going to put that there. And let's get this to work. So if I erase that and put that there, it should be fine, except I had to load this up, and there we go. Yeah. Let's open up Barbara again, and so this is the same code, so we don't really need to see. We have seen how it works. Now we will do the changes necessary for this new version. So if you read through the question, it says you need to have fixed offset X and offset Y amounts, and those that will basically be the start X and the start Y, right? Because you are offsetting from 0. So we have to take those as user inputs from the driver, and then we need to pass them in. So I can say offset X here and offset Y, and those two things I need to provide over here. So right now, the way things are, it's basically doing 0 and 0 for those values. So if I run it like this, it's going to do the exact same thing it was doing before. So 294 is the height, and it's going to make an exact copy. All right? Yeah, crop driver was it called? There probably was a name for it. Yeah, the driver function named crop driver. Thanks, James, for showing that. It's at least a lot easier to type. Yeah, anyway. So crop driver is that one. Now if I try to run get crop from picture driver, it's actually going to work. It's going to run, but it's going to run what I had earlier. It's not going to. So I'm sure some of you discovered that painfully. So you need to give the new name in your running. All right. So yeah. So after that, where you start from just needs to be taken like the width and the height. So I'm going to call this start X and request integer, and I can say enter starting position. So again, the starting position is going to be very similar to the width matter. So I'm going to say between 0 and width -1, because it's a position that you're going to start from, right? So that we can do like that. So we will do the input validation in a second. And the starting Y also needs to be taken in, but that's going to be based on the height. So the -1 comes in because of what? The -1 comes in because we are now telling them not a width, we are asking them to provide the coordinates, starting X position or X coordinate and starting Y coordinates. And as you know, the coordinates start from 0 and they go up until 1 less than. So if the width is 10, it goes from 0 to 9. So that's why if you want 9 printed there, you will say take the width -1. Okay. And now if you're going to validate this, the validation for this one is now not that difficult. Same story as before. We will say, okay, start X is now less than 0, because 0 is still a valid one. Yeah, so by the way, we should have changed this. It should be from 1 in the previous one for the width, because we said that the width is not acceptable as 0. So it should be 1. So just a little change to this message. We changed that in, we just added that later on. There we go. So just for the printing part or the displaying part. All right. So the starting coordinate can start from 1 and go up until 1 less than the width. And we will say, okay, if it's less than 0, or if it's greater than or equals to the width of the picture. Yeah, somebody's got a question for them. Yeah. Keep that typed up, I'll get to that. And we will say error if there's a problem, and we can tell them to re-enter. So all you need to do is say error and show the prompt again. Same story with the Y, starting Y coordinate. So if the start Y is less than 0, or if the start Y is greater than or equals to pick a height this time. We do that and we get the same prompt, paste it, and we say error. Yeah. So drivers don't normally take parameters. You can make them take parameters, that's fine. The driver is not really an issue. But anyway, I can take these inputs in the same way we did the previous version. And now here comes the problem. When you're entering a width, the width can't now be just between 1 and whatever, right? Because actually it can be between 1, because even if it's the last coordinate, it can still be 1. So it's fine, it can be between 1, but the upper limit, it can't be the entire width of the picture, right? So what would be the right value to put here? Now if you think about it, the last coordinate, so the width of the picture was 222, right? The last coordinate is 221. They go from 0 to 221. And if the user wants just the last width, basically starting from 221, they will say 221 is the starting position and the width is 1, right? So that's the last acceptable thing we can have, right? So so how do we get that? What can we say? So we can say, so if we say the entered start X, if we subtract that, what will happen? So we will say enter a width between 1 and so the width is 222. That minus the start X is 221, right? So we said that if they start at the last one, the highest one that they can start from, then this will be 221, this will be 222, and then the difference will be 1. So that is what we can say, right? The maximum that you can have is 1. So this will turn into 1. And you will see that when we run it. So that's that. And we are not actually showing that for the height. But let's keep it like that for a minute. And let's remember to change the name and run the crop driver. And with Barbara in it. And okay, so enter a starting X coordinate. Now if I enter, if I want to get a thin strip from the right edge, a vertical strip, so I will say, okay, I'm starting from 221. And then I enter the starting Y coordinate. I'm going to start from the top, 0, okay? And the width, now it says, okay, the maximum width you can have is going to be 1. So we got the prompt working right. We haven't changed the actual code. So we got that part to work, right? So if you enter 1, it should be fine in the height. So it's a tiny pixel right there. But we got the logic to work. At least it displays the correct logic. So let's open up Barbara again. Now, if I say the starting X coordinate is 0, and say the width starting Y is 0, it tells me the width can now be between 1 and 222. That's right? Because my starting position is 0. I can have the full width of the original image. The full width of the original image was 252. That's all fine. So height, let's say it's 2, and it's fine again. So let's get rid of those and work those into the condition as well. So this part now needs to be put in place of the original thing here. All right. So if it's outside that range, we are going to say there's a problem. And same thing goes for the height. So you will say pick a height minus start y. So if you are trying to memorize this at this moment, you will probably not get it. So if you develop it in layers, or if you incrementally add the detail, you will get what needs to be done here. Okay. So enter a starting x coordinate. Now if I enter something in between, let's say 100, and enter the starting y coordinate, 293, so somewhere in the middle, let's say another 100, it's asking me to enter a bit that is whatever that's permitted. All right. So, but it's not copying in the correct region yet. We haven't done that part yet. We still have that hard-coded thing. So this needs to be changed to start x, and this needs to be changed to start y, because we got those values. We passed that in. And now in our program, instead of starting y from 0, we will say we are starting from offset y, and this starts from offset x. So the only thing now is we should let's see, offset x, offset y, and this one should be offset y plus. So offset y and offset x, they will tell you where the starting coordinates are. So imagine if it's 0, then we want this thing to be the full height, right? So I think it works fine. So you just need to add them. So that's why they're called the offset. It's a bit of a hint, and by changing the starting location, we can get a different part cropped. Okay, so let's say the starting place is somewhere like 50, and starting y coordinate is somewhere like 50 as well. And the width, let's say that's like 100. I can put 100 in there. Enter a height, I'll put that also as 100, and I have a problem here now. Oh yeah. So because the copy is fairly small, and the source picture is bigger, we have this problem. So it's not having, it can't be, earlier it was in the same spot, right? It was in the top left-hand corner. So we didn't run into this issue. So we need to, because our y values are starting from offset y, we need to take them away from our y coordinates when we are referring to the copy, because in the copied pixel it should start from the top left, right? So offset x should be taken out as well. So if we do that, it should work. So Barbara, all right, let's say we are starting at 50, starting y is also 50, and we want a width of 100 and height also of 100, and there you go. So that is from the middle of the picture, and we got a square region because that's what we entered, 100 and 100, and offset by a certain amount. Another way you could do this is by, I'll show that version also very quickly. So I'm going to call this B. Now in this one I will start the region from 0, and I can go from I can go through the width. So basically the same thing I had earlier, except when it comes to getting stuff from the source, I will add the offset X here and the offset Y. So I don't need to subtract anything anymore because I have done the reverse. I have added it to the source. So that's probably a simpler way of looking at it, instead of making the loop go through the exact range. So when I'm running it, I'll run version B now. I will put a print statement to say that I'm running this, just like a good magician does. Show what's inside the hat. Yeah, so let's say 50 and 50 and 100 and 100, and so it's running version B. Okay, so version B is probably the easier one to do, because all you need to do is just add the offset to the Y. But look, if you did it like the first one I showed, that's also possible, and most people would probably think, okay, that's probably what you have to do. You have to get the loop to run in the correct range. But that's more work, as you can clearly see. You have to change a lot of things. Any questions? So in this one, this is basically what we have changed. So we ran a little bit over time than we planned. Yeah. So any questions? No questions. Yeah, Matthew. Should you put all of the input values outside the driver? Yeah. So don't take any inputs inside the function of interest, because we want to keep it reusable, right? General and reusable. We want to be able to use it with anything. So that's a common theme that we will have with the programs. So if you don't have any more questions, I guess we can finally call it a night. For once I thought I finished on time, but turned out we had one more question. So for the optional stuff, feel free to ask Robbie if you have any questions about them during his chat, and or you can email him, or you can ask in the discussion forums. But other than that, what I'll do is I'll actually send these solutions fairly quickly. So last time I sent them along with the feedback, but I'll send them soon. So have a good night, folks, and I'll see you all next week. Yeah, no problem, Thomas. Any final questions from anyone? Rohan, thought I replied to you, but can't remember which one it was. All right, okay. So, like I said, I've had a lot of questions about the tutorial, so I have prioritized those, and if anyone sends me emails about the assignment, I will get to them. Yeah, so they're all there on the blackboard under course information. No, not that. So course information, due dates, assessments. If you go there, and click on this. Yeah. Yeah, no problem, Rohan. All right, so what I'll do is I'll manually disconnect anyone who's left because we want the recordings to appear. Have a good night. Just drop me an email if you have any questions.